actual problem in this
country. Can a woman have a penis?
Yes. It's going to take them a long time on the National Health Service to get rid of it, but that's another separate problem. At the moment, I'm really, really focused on the central mission, which is we just got 90,000 members.
You're a bit
of
a straight talker.
I am a completely straight talker.
Do you want to be Prime Minister or not?
Every so often, an interview with Piers Morgan stops being a discussion and turns into a pressure test. And this one, it's exactly that. Before we dive in, comment where you're watching from and don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Right after that explosive exchange with Daniela Weiss, filled with talk of land, faith and fury, Piers brings in Zack Polanski, leader of the Green Party. What starts as a calm follow-up quickly shifts into a live trap. Piers isn't just asking questions, he's laying bait. And Zack, still composed, walks right into it, thinking it's just another debate. This is where the real show begins. Zack takes a breath and gives his first response.
The controversy surrounding protests now, and I'm joined in the studio by Zack Polanski, leader of the UK Green Party. I mean, just on that interview, Zack, your response to that. I mean, this is not an unusual thought process. There are hardline members of this Israeli government, Smotrich, Ben-Gvir and others, and increasingly from his rhetoric, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who probably don't necessarily disagree with what we've just heard, who do actually think this is all Israel's land and they should be entitled to have it back.
I thought it was an extraordinary interview, and to talk about from the river to the sea, but in terms of the genocide of the Palestinians, which she couldn't have been much clearer about. You encouraged her to give more information, and she backtracked a little bit, but the intent was very clear. It's not just senior ministers. The Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, talked about the Amalek, talking about the smiting of the Palestinians. So I think the mask is well and truly off. And, what I would say to this is for that person, Daniela Weiss, to be given a Nobel Peace Prize shows the absolute incoherency around the world response.
Well, look, to be clear, I don't think she's going to, and I think the process for nominations is quite flawed. It allows people like her to be nominated and then claim to be nominated. But there's another flip side to this, which has been the flip side from the start, which is that Hamas are also wedded to a genocidal onslaught against the Jewish people. They've made no pretense of it. Well, they did on October the 7th, 2 years ago, in their marauding over the border with 1,200 people murdered, 250 plus kidnapped, the devastation they wrought, the murder, the mayhem, and their vow to keep doing this. Do you share the same view about Hamas as you do about those who would seek to expel all Palestinians?
And here it comes, Piers Morgan's signature move, definition warfare. He knows the power of one word. If you hesitate to call Hamas a terror group, the public judgment hits before you finish your sentence. Zack Polanski tries to balance on that razor's edge, condemning violence while calling out Israel's actions too. But in Piers' world, nuance is weakness. It's yes or no, terrorist or not. And the moment Zack reaches for complexity, the tone shifts. This stops being a debate and becomes a battle over definitions live on air.
I condemn all the violence, including from a terrorist organisation.
And you accept that Hamas is a terror organisation?
Of course, they kill civilians, and that's literally the definition.
I mean, the BBC don't call them terrorists.
Well, the UN were very clear that Hamas are committing war crimes and Israel are committing war crimes, in fact, a genocide. But our British government only talk about one of those, which is Hamas. We never hear them talk about the war crimes that they're active participants in.
But do you think the Israeli government is a terrorist organisation?
I think the Israeli army, certainly, in terms of, should be prescribed in terms of when we look at the behaviour and the way they've behaved. There's a surgeon, a British surgeon called Nick Maynard. He was in one of the hospitals. He said that on one day you would see every casualty would come in with an ankle injury, the next an abdomen, the next day teenage boys would have wounds in their testicles. The only conclusion you could make is that the Israeli government were using these children as target practice. That's disgusting behaviour. I think more widely, though, so there's only been 5 Jewish people in the last 100 years in Britain who have led a political party. I'm one of them. So I felt October 7th very deeply, as I know the entire Jewish community, in fact, the entire world did. At the same time, that can never justify the response that we've seen from this Israeli government. And in fact, just yesterday, I think we heard Andrew Neil say that Israel might be losing the peace. I think that's...
Yeah, I thought it was he said a very good thing, actually, on camera. I read the transcript to it. And there's no doubt that polling yesterday, I saw, I think Washington Post, but it showed that most Israelis now want this over, and most Israelis' view of Netanyahu has plummeted now from his high several months into the war, which may be one of the reasons why he's being slow in getting across the line here. It's interesting that you categorise Hamas as a terror group, only because in the UK the BBC do not yet, which I find enduringly baffling. But Palestine Action is a complex one. So they're a British direct action group that was prescribed as a terrorist organisation by the government in July. And to be clear, that means membership or support of the group is a criminal offence punishable by up to 14 years in prison. Now, this came after activists broke into Brize Norton, the big RAF base, in June, and caused £7 million worth of damage by spray painting 2 RAF Voyager planes. They claimed responsibility. So it was a protest against the UK support of Israel's war in Gaza, and as a consequence have been designated a terror organisation. More than 2,000 people have been arrested at demonstrations across the UK. You oppose this categorisation. Why?
It's absolutely outrageous. We're seeing 89-year-olds with walking sticks and wheelchairs being arrested. The conversation we just had about whether
they were carrying, just on that point, if they were carrying Hamas flags, would you accept they should be arrested?
Well, I think that's a completely separate...
Well, no, but it's a hypothetical, but I want to understand that it's not about whether they're 89 years old, is my point. It's what they're doing.
Yeah, well, I don't think anyone should be carrying a Hamas flag.
But if your 89-year-old you're talking about was carrying a Hamas flag at a protest rally, would you accept that there was a right to arrest them?
I think arresting anyone for carrying a flag is probably a silly way.
In other words, the point I'm making is the age is kind of irrelevant. It's what they're doing.
Well, I think the real point here is that we need to see a free Palestine. We know that a lot of the population in this country, the majority of the population, are disgusted by what they're seeing, and they're disgusted at what they're seeing as a genocide. And rather than worrying about the flags or the words, I think the government need to worry about the bombs, the fighter jet components they're selling, which are literally raining down on the Palestinian people. And I think it's all.
But as somebody who wants to be a British Prime Minister, I presume, at some stage, otherwise why go into politics? You'd like to lead the country.
Well, at the moment, I'm focused on getting more MPs and challenging the Labour government.
But you don't become a politician not to one day lead your country.
You're not going to encourage me to do a Jo Swinson on your show, Piers. So
I can't even remember what Jo Swinson did.
She said that she was going to be Prime Minister and promptly lost her seat.
Well, do you not want to be?
At the moment, I'm really, really focused on the central mission, which is we just got 90,000 members.
You're a bit of a straight
Party.
talker.
I am a completely straight talker.
Well, do you want to be Prime Minister or not?
A classic Piers Morgan manoeuvre. Switch the focus from policy to personal ambition. And it's a subtle but devastating shift. One moment you're debating foreign policy, the next you're defending your own credibility. When a politician hesitates to claim power, they instantly look uncertain, even if their answer is perfectly reasonable. And Piers knows it. He thrives on that hesitation. Because on live TV, it's not about what you believe. It's about how confidently you say it. Optics beat nuance every time, and Piers plays that game better than anyone.
I want to make sure that there's a Green Prime Minister in the future. Whether that's me or not, that's going to be for the British public to decide.
I'm trying to work out the headline is Zack Polanski, I do not want to be Prime Minister,
that's
or I do.
That's definitely not the headline.
Or
the headline is right now I'm focused on growing those 90,000 members. We've got nearly 2 million votes.
But ultimately you want power, otherwise you can't do anything.
Yes, I absolutely want to see a Green
Otherwise
government.
you're just talking.
Right.
So a politician obviously needs the mechanism of power, otherwise you can't do anything you're talking about.
Totally.
Another textbook Piers Morgan gear change. The sudden pivot to personal ambition. Do you want to be Prime Minister? It sounds simple, but it's a trap dressed as curiosity. Zack Polanski keeps insisting he wants a Green Prime Minister, not necessarily himself. But in the ruthless optics of politics, that answer lands like hesitation. To the audience, it looks like he's dodging responsibility. And Piers knows exactly how that plays. This isn't really a question about leadership. It's a test of credibility. Piers frames it perfectly. Why listen to someone who won't lead? It's not policy and it's performance. And in that moment, Zack's caution becomes the story.
Totally, but at the same time...
So de facto, you want to be Prime Minister, don't you?
Well,
otherwise, how can you do anything?
At the moment, I'm focused
Otherwise,
on...
why am I interviewing you? Oh, seriously. Why would I listen to a word you say?
So you only interview people who want to be Prime Minister at the next general election?
If you genuinely don't aspire for power, you can't do any of the things you're talking about.
I really want to see a Green government. I really want to see a Green Prime Minister. Whether that person is me or not, I think is a separate conversation.
Why wouldn't it be you, then?
Because at the moment, we've only got 4 MPs, and even as the leader of the party, I don't expect to be in power at the next election.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't think there'll be a Green government, because I don't think there'll even be a Nigel Farage reform government.
Singular lack of ambition.
Well, no, because we have a first past the post system.
I have a postcard on my desk in my office, and it was given to me by my mother, and it's a hippopotamus flying with a flock of seagulls, and the headline, Ambition Knows No Bounds.
Right.
That's fueled me my entire life. Why would you be so lacking in ambition?
I'm deeply ambitious. I want to make sure that the Green Party is in the balance of power. And the next election, we'll be calling for a wealth tax, proportional representation, and action on the climate crisis. I think that's pretty ambitious.
Do you think the British people are going to be supporting and voting for somebody who thinks it's okay to go and smash up planes, RAF bases, planes which are used by us to defend our country.
I think the British public will absolutely support someone who says that we stand against this genocide and we stand against the non-violent right.
Well, the UK
protest.
government has not categorised it as genocide. And there's a reason for that, as you know, right? And the reason for that is that there has never been an established genocide by the International Court, ever.
I mean, it's incoherent to not call this a genocide.
Well,
anyone can look on the
Rwanda,
phone
for
or their
example,
TV screens.
Rwanda, was never actually determined to be a genocide. The bar for a genocide is incredibly high. That's why I've resisted using that word.
Okay.
I think I prefer the word ethnic cleansing for what's going on. I think the word genocide gets tossed around. It was tossed around within days of October the 7th, which I found nonsensical.
Well, let's start from first principles. If there's an ethnic cleansing going on, should we not stop it?
Yes.
Well, I think then the word...
I think words do matter.
Well, of course they matter.
Yeah.
And I think it's very clearly a genocide. And by the way, most genocide scholars...
But why would you
me.
not think that actually breaking into bases illegally, causing millions of pounds worth of damage to planes is not an act of terror?
Because there's a genocide going on, or as you call it, an ethnic cleansing.
But that's
Once again, Piers returns to the battlefield of definitions. This time, the questions cut even sharper. Is Hamas a terror group? Should Palestine action be banned too? Zack Polanski doesn't flinch. He condemns the killing of civilians outright. But then he takes the harder road, arguing that the Israeli army's conduct from hospital bombings to civilian targeting also crosses moral and legal lines. And that's where the tension peaks, because the entire argument now rests on one fragile word: terrorism. For Piers, it's a label that divides good from evil. For Zack, it's a mirror, one that should reflect all sides, but in front of a live audience, that nuance can sound like moral confusion. This is the tightrope moment, where the difference between terrorism, vandalism, and civil disobedience isn't just semantics. It's the difference between being understood or being destroyed in the headlines the next morning.
Battery. I'm talking about what they actually did.
I don't think it's about battery at all. I think that's the British public saying if our politicians are not going to listen to us, we're going to take non-violent direct action.
Well, it wasn't non-violent. It was literally breaking up planes.
I don't think the plane's going to cry from its hurt wounds. I think this is ultimately about
£7 million worth of taxpayer money was taken to repair the damage to these planes.
What was that plane going to do, Piers?
What
was that plane going to do?
All sorts of things.
Possibly go and kill people, right? And drop bombs.
Possibly defend the country against an attack, as it did in World War II, as it might do if Vladimir Putin decides to fire some rockets our way. The idea that the RAF only do things that you don't like or agree with is insulting.
Well, I think you put words in my mouth. I think the RAF do
That's what you're implying. You said, what do
they
do? It's an RAF plane. What do you think they do?
Well, when we're supplying RAF planes to Gaza and to share intelligence and fly over while we're massacring people, on average, a classroom of children are dying every single day. I think it's about getting back to those first principles, that all of this is happening. It's happening in our name.
So you would ground all RAF planes now?
From being involved with the genocide, absolutely.
Where would you allow them to be involved?
Well, if they're defending our country, as you said, but as far as
where
I know
else?
at the moment,
would you allow them to be involved in any overseas military action?
Well, I think there is a question about Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, Syria, all places we've had interventions in, and all places, in fact, Iraq, that you famously opposed, and quite rightly too, where we've actually made things worse. So I'm not a pacifist. I think there are times when we do need to get involved with war, where we do need to make sure we're defending our own country. But I don't see any of that applying in Palestine.
You see, if I take your 89-year-old, I have a problem just with the free speech thing and the way it's going in this country. Right? It seems to me ridiculous. When Graham Linehan was arrested at an airport by 5 armed police for jokes on X, it's ridiculous.
Well, I think they were armed because he was in an airport.
I've heard that argument. Actually, there are many unarmed cops at the airport.
But there's most cops in the airport are armed, right? When you
many
look
are
around,
armed and many are not armed. So I think it's a bit of a fatuous...
Do you really think, though, they said, we've got Graham Linehan, let's go get some
I don't know why
weapons.
they're arresting any British citizen for jokes on X. It's ridiculous.
Well, I think talking about punching someone in the balls...
It was an obvious joke, wasn't it?
I don't think it's funny, though.
Have you been to a Ricky Gervais show?
OK, let's start with this.
Well, hang on.
Hate crime against LGBT people has gone up 125%
have you been to a Ricky Gervais
in the last 5 years.
So Ricky Gervais should be arrested?
I would rather pinch my eyes out than go to see a Ricky Gervais show. But that's fine.
That's fine.
Ricky Gervais is entitled to go make those jokes.
He's actually hilarious.
Jokes and inciting violence are very different things. And I think we've got to have a line. You'd agree there's a line, right?
I think it was obvious the joke he was making.
What, punching people in the balls?
Yes. Well, let me ask you, the build-up to that joke was he does not believe that biological men should be using women's spaces. Do you?
I think the phrase biological men needs unpacking.
Not really. You're either born male or female.
Yes, and then lots of people transition and lots of people identify as other things. I think
but this idea you can become a woman.
You want to talk about free speech, but what about tolerance? For a long time...
Yeah, but what about women's rights?
Well, women's rights are totally fine. In fact,
they're not, though, are they? They've come under massive attack.
I would say they're totally fine.
Mainly because...
You didn't let me finish the sentence.
Yeah.
They're totally fine in reference to trans people. The
they're
problems
totally
that women
fine.
have, gynecology appointments that they need, the gender pay gap, violence against women and girls, domestic abuse. These are the problems. These aren't the problems of trans people.
Do you think trans athletes should trans athletes be in women's sport?
Yes.
What?
If a trans athlete is a woman... Then, of course, they should be in the sport that they're participating in.
But they're not a woman, they're a man.
Well, I think that's deeply offensive.
They're born biological men. They can call themselves trans women. I'll respect them. If they want to be called she or he, that's fine. I don't care. But what you can't have is biological males competing in women's sport. Everybody with half a brain knows this is completely outrageous, wrong, dangerous, as we saw in the Paris Olympics, where you had a boxer quitting after 40 seconds because she'd never been hit that hard in the ring by somebody, it turns out, has male chromosomes. And you want to be Prime Minister of this country. Well, maybe you don't. We're not sure. But either way, you want to lead a party in this country that thinks that's fine.
I'm glad that you think this is the number one issue when I actually want to talk about the cost of living crisis and inequality.
I think it's actually a much more important issue.
Let's talk about sports. Essentially, there is a whole spectrum of testosterone and estrogen, which you have in terms of people who are biological
You're a man or woman, and men should not...
I think that's the simplistic, stupid argument. If you don't actually look at the information
who are born
and have any nuance or complexity.
If you're born a biological man and you want to identify as a trans woman, you'll have my full respect. You can have exactly the same rights.
You don't sound very respectful.
No, I do.
It sounds very insulting.
No. I've always said I want them to have the exact same rights to fairness, equality and safety as me. And you.
Do you know how many people in the country care about this when you poll them? Less than 1%.
Why is Donald
It's interesting that we talk about it so much. What's going on in there?
Why is Donald
Could
Trump
it be that we're trying to distract from the wealth of multimillionaires and billionaires, the fact that people are homeless, the fact that people are struggling on the street by talking about trans people?
Honestly,
when they're more victims of the inequality itself.
Do me a favour.
We should be talking about the inequality.
You
and not
should
this
be standing.
War
if you want to lead,
bollocks.
if you want to lead, you might think defending women's rights is bollocks.
No,
and I will
defending women's rights is really, really important, but we're not defending women's rights.
You don't
right
want
now.
to. You don't want to
we're
defend
in
them.
this silly culture war discussion that isn't defending women's rights.
You want to
Let's talk about the police
rights.
force who are institutionally misogynistic and sexist. Let's have a conversation about that.
That's
about women's rights. That's not about trans rights.
Okay, but actually, you want to trample on women's rights in sport.
No, I don't at all.
You said you're fine with biological men competing in women's
Because
sport.
a trans woman is a woman, so I'm not trampling on their rights.
But
what I'm doing is defending their rights.
The UK Supreme Court has established that a male is a male and a female is a female.
The UK Supreme Court, its job is to look at... Yeah, of course they're wrong. Their job is to look at what's been legislated for. The legislation is wrong, and we should get better parliamentarians who actually stand by trans people.
Do you think a woman
recognise they're a marginalised group in this country who are being bullied by people like you, Piers,
I'm not a
with
bully.
wealth and power, who should know better than to target these people rather than targeting the actual problem in this country.
Can a woman have a penis?
Yes. It's going to take them a long time on the National Health Service to get rid of it, but that's another separate problem.
And here it is in the viral detonation. In a single question, Piers Morgan flips the table from geopolitics to gender identity. What was a nuanced debate about war and morality suddenly becomes a yes or no spectacle. No middle ground, no context. Just the blunt provocation, can a woman have a penis? Okay, that's the kind of moment built for viral clips. Shocking, absurdly reductive, and impossible to dodge. Zack Polanski, caught mid-thought, now has to defend an entire philosophy of gender on a show that thrives on simplicity. And this is right here is the moment everyone remembers. Not the foreign policy debate, not the moral arguments, just that one question and the chaos it leaves behind.
All right. I think we'll leave it on a woman can have a penis.
I think you're lacking nuance and complexity about a pretty complicated
Not really. You couldn't have been clearer.
I'm clear, because actually when you want to look at the science...
You were crystal clear. Ask a simple question.
But you're laughing at it, which I think demeans trans people.
Absolutely ridiculous.
What have you got against trans people? Why are you punching down? Why are you not saying
nothing against
the real
trans
problem
people?
in this
I've already
country?
told you that I think trans people...
You sound like you have a huge problem with trans people.
No. It sounds to me like you don't understand what a woman is, which I think is a huge problem for someone leading a party in this country.
A woman is a gender.
Sorry?
You said, what's a woman?
No,
a woman is a gender.
And
gender
female.
is complicated.
No.
Gender is a spectrum.
It's not complicated. A woman is a biological...
Is gender a spectrum? Is it that binary?
Do you think people are born male and female?
Not necessarily.
Oh, for God's sake.
I think it's more complicated than that.
It's not more complicated, Zack.
Well, it's not more complicated than that if you're a TV show host who wants to make it binary and ridiculous.
Zack, you're going to have
but
to
actually,
work
if you
this
want to
stuff
have a
out, mate,
nuanced conversation that actually reflects science
when I asked you if you
and
want
information...
when I asked you if you want to be Prime Minister, there is not a cat in hell's chance of you ever becoming Prime Minister if you don't know what a woman is.
Well, you'll see us going up in the polls. We're the most favourable party in London right now, so let's see about
Why do you
that.
start going out tomorrow with your big campaign that women can have penises?
I'm going to be going out tomorrow with my big campaign
about
about inequality in this country between the multimillionaires and billionaires and working class
when people
communities
see you
who are really
say
suffering.
to me, women have a penis,
Well, because you're
see how
trying
it
to
plays
distract from inequality, and actually I think
really,
most people
just asking you
don't
questions.
care about the conversation
If you
we've
want
had.
to be Prime
They
Minister,
just care about the fact they want to put food on the table.
You are a fast emerging.
Trans people
You are a fast emerging politician in this country. I'm perfectly entitled to ask you what you believe.
You're absolutely entitled. And people are entitled to see the ludicrousness of these questions rather than tackling the inequality and the fact we're not funding our National Health Service, the fact we've got schools crumbling, the fact that people are struggling to put food on the table. That's what people are worried about, not trans people.
OK. Actually, they're worried about women's rights.
I'm worried about women's rights too, but as I said, I offered several times to talk about the police force. I offered several times to talk about the inequality pay gap.
You want to talk about other things, I get that.
I want to talk about women's rights. Let's have a conversation about women's rights, but let's not talk about trans women specifically.
You think women have penises?
You had said to me, can a woman have a penis?
Yeah.
And I said, yes. So if they're transitioning, for instance, then of course a woman can have a penis.
It's complete bullshit.
When were you a doctor or an expert in women's rights or
UK
Supreme
Court has made it crystal clear.
But that's not the Supreme Court's job. The Supreme Court's job is to look at legislation
lay down the law
and
of
then make a legal ruling.
OK. So you know more than the Supreme Court?
Well, yes, actually, in this case, yes, I do.
Zack Polanski, it's good to meet you.
Lovely to meet you, Piers. That was a pleasure.
Best of luck on your campaign to become British Prime Minister. If you need a biology lesson, you can find me after the show.
Definitely won't be coming to you, Piers.
And that's how it ends. Not with diplomacy or reason, but with a biology punchline. Piers Morgan walks away with his viral moment, perfectly packaged for social media. Zack Polanski walks away cornered, his every word frozen into a meme he'll never control. It's the same story every time. Television rewarding simplicity over substance. Piers wins the clip, not necessarily the argument. And Zack, for all his nuance, learns the hardest truth of modern politics, that on live TV depth doesn't trend. In the end, we're left with another reminder of how easily complex issues are stripped down to headlines and hashtags. Nuance loses, noise wins. But here's the real question. Who came out stronger? Piers with his ruthless binary trap, or Zack for refusing to play along? Let me know what you think. Drop your thoughts in the comments below.